Hello, one all. Is my view of the world ends with you season finale, and really is my view of the season as a whole. Because oh god, I was so freaking excited when this anime was announced. I mean, the world ends with you was my favorite game for a lot of years. I've probably beaten it at least 6 or 7 times, which is quite frankly a ridiculous number of times to play through a JRPG to completion. And overall, I'd say I'm fairly happy with what we got. Fairly happy with the anime. I mean, there was definitely some problems. Definitely some problems. I mean, pacing was absolutely insane, especially in the first couple episodes where, they were trying to race through the first week in like 3 days. Yeah, 12 episodes really wasn't enough to fully tell this story, but anyway, next big thing was the combat. No, I liked a lot of this combat. It was this cool parkour style that really made use of the environments. I like that. I really like that. But the problem was the series kind of fell into the finisher move problem, like in Digimon or Power Rangers, where basically every fight ends with them pulling out this big ultimate finisher move. I am glad they just didn't use the same old recycle animations again and again and again and did something, unique for each one, but still, it felt like every fight was just waiting for Neku to say, hey, let's actually work together and combine our powers to take out this enemy. Oh, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? But as for the actual enemies, I'd say their CGI style was hit or miss. I mean, some of them looked really, really good, especially in combat when they were moving so quickly. You couldn't really get a good look at them, but others, yeah, not so much. And the worst of all was probably Rhyme. I mean, her noise form was supposed to be this absolute peak of cuteness, absolute adorability, but it just looked really off-putting and strange and unnatural, and it kind of creeped me out, and that really bothered me because I wanted to love Rhyme. I really did, but I really, really just couldn't. And I definitely have some mixed feelings about the pins. I mean, I'm glad they actually used pins from the game as they were used in the game, and I'm glad they went beyond, just using the same 6 pins over and over again, like fire, lightning, wind for the whole 3 weeks, but I just wish they'd given more attention to where the pins actually came from. Now, obviously, this could have taken up a lot of time and it wasn't super important, but maybe it's like a little notification on the screen every time Neku earns a pin to, foreshadow its use and explain where it came from. Maybe like at the start of every week, Neku could say, hey, look, I got 6 new pins, cool. Because in the game, you can get pins from defeating Noise, buying them from shops, earning them from completing missions, or sometimes people just give them to you. In week 2, Shoto and Now just give Neku a pin they won in the Tin Pin Slammer tournament. Oh yeah, Tin Pin Slammer, that's something that was completely cut from the anime, and that irked a lot of fans of the game. Now this is basically a minigame where you're trying to push your opponent's pins off the table by flicking them. I know that sounds super, super simple, but it isn't. Each pin has like 7 different stats that affect exactly how it plays, making a game of strategy and skill, and it is a surprisingly large part of the game. Seriously, after the tournament in week 2, you can basically play against a different person every day of the week in this one little random shop that opens up, and when you beat the game, you actually unlock another day that is fully focused on Tin Pin Slammer. I mean, there is kind of a side story where you can meet the Mr. H and Joshua from the main timeline. Oh yeah, this is set in alternate universe, by the way. But the main focus is on Tin Pin Slammer, because Neku wants to win the Tin Pin Slammer tournament to help him overcome his emo urges, but ends up joining a team of color-coded crime fighters who are trying to stop an evil criminal organization using Tin Pin Slammer. I am not joking, it is as absolutely freaking insane as it sounds, but it's also absolutely hilarious and I freaking love it. And literally, every character from the game appears in this alternate timeline, alternate reality, and you can talk to all of them and you can play against almost all of them in Tin Pin Slammer, so it's weird, it's insane, but it's also a lot of fun, I liked it. Anyway though, speaking of characters, the anime really did water down a lot of them. I mean, Neku, in the beginning of the game, he is an absolute and complete jerk. He keeps trying to run away from Shiki despite the fact they need to fight together to survive, and when he tries to kill her, it's not because he's being possessed by Noise, but because he just doesn't trust her. Yeah, he's a jerk. He is a serious jerk, and he only really changes in the last 2 days of the first week. Shiki, meanwhile, is completely and utterly focused on fashion, and constantly rants about it. At one point, she rips off Neku's pants in the middle of the street because he has a loose button. I am not joking. That is how utterly, utterly obsessed she is with fashion, and making sure everyone is dressed to perfection. As for Joshua, yeah, he is just so much more utterly annoying in the game. I know that doesn't sound possible, but he is. He's actually constantly taunting Neku about how he murdered him, at one point asking, hey Neku, how'd you die? Right after Neku figures out that Joshua was the one that killed him. Oh my god, I hate him. I hate him so much, and yeah, not a lot of players were actually mourning his death when he supposedly died at the end of week 2. And finally, there's Beat, who is, yeah, he's dumb. He is just so overwhelmingly stupid in the game. I know he came off as, kind of, a little bit slow in the anime, but in the game, it's just so much worse. At one point, someone tells him he's standing on thin ice, and his response is literally, "No, I'm not, because it's too hot for ice to form." Entirely serious. Yeah, so I'm kind of glad that was toned down a little bit. Anyway, so let's get to the actual final episode that I promised to talk about when I started this video. The final fight was okay. It was definitely well choreographed, and I absolutely loved the teamwork between all of them. It was just a little bit too brief, and honestly, I thought the finishing move looked better in the game than the anime, which is really saying something. I mean, seriously. But then we actually get to the true final boss, Joshua. He's alive! Dun dun dun! And Neku is just so stupid. I mean, seriously, he's like, "Hey, oh my god, Joshua, I'm so happy you're alive. Let's go work together now to go fight the composer. I'm not going to wonder how it is you're alive or why it is you're standing in the room where the composer's supposedly standing." Oh, come on, Neku, you are smarter than that. You are smarter than that. You should have figured out there was definitely something up with Joshua and that he was not your friend anymore. I mean, at this point in the game, it was fairly obvious that Joshua was the real composer, though the real shocker was that Neku was Joshua's pawn, and he'd been fighting for the last 3 weeks to destroy Shibuya. Yeah, I did not see that coming. Though I have to say, the other option really wasn't all that much better. I mean, Megumi's big plan was literally to brainwash the entire city into thinking like him, into becoming a world without pain or joy, a world that was stagnant, and in a rather interesting twist, a world that was identical to the way that Neku had been living his life. I mean, Neku's headphones are his way of symbolically keeping the world out, keeping people out, making sure that no one got in, no one could affect him, no one could change him, so that he could constantly just be himself. And that's, exactly what Megumi is planning for all of Shibuya, to make it a city, a town where there is no change, where there is no progress, where it's always constantly still, constantly just himself, with his boundaries never expanding. But Neku changed. He let people in as he played through the game, and, it was slow at first, but by the end of week 3, he was someone new, someone who's willing to trust his friends, even after having that trust broken, and that's why he didn't shoot Joshua. That's why he dropped the gun, and Joshua was utterly amazed by this, calling it a small miracle, and it made him realize that, maybe Shibuya is worth saving. If it can inspire someone like Neku, someone who's so close-minded, to change and grow and to open as much as he did, then maybe the city should be spared. Maybe the city should be allowed to continue growing and evolving and changing on its own. And so he lets Neku and everyone go. And I actually do kind of prefer the game here, because when Neku wakes up in the middle of the crossing, in the game, his response is literally to scream out with all the pain and anger of the last 3 weeks of betrayal, "What the hell?" And just echoes and echoes, and everyone just kind of turns and looks at him, and then he realizes, oh, wait a minute, these people can actually see me, can't they? Well, this is awkward. I love that, absolutely freaking love that moment. And then he reunites all his friends in front of the statue of Hachiko. And I'm not sure how well this is portrayed in the anime, but in the game, this was an incredibly significant spot. This is where he formed all his pacts with all his partners. This is essentially where he made all his friends, as much as you can call Joshua a friend. I mean, I think Neku considers him a friend even after, he was murdered by him twice. And then Shiki arrives. Yay! And it's definitely interesting that we don't see her face. I was always kind of confused about this in the game. I was wondering why that was the case. I thought maybe they just didn't want to, make a new character model, but someone actually explained it to me online before, and it made a lot of sense. Basically, remember, her entry fee was her appearance, how she looked, and that she was so vain about it, she was so concerned about it, it overwhelmed her, but now she's let it go. Now she doesn't care so much, and to Neku, who literally viewed her as the most important thing to him, her appearance doesn't matter anymore. He loves her, he cares about her as Shiki, who she is deep down in her soul, so we don't actually really even need to see what she looks like, and I really do love that as a detail. And hey, Josh revived everyone else too. Yay! Though this is definitely interesting, in the game, only Rhyme was revived after being erased. And this does make sense. Basically, in this world, when you die, your soul kind of enters the universal soul soup from which all new life emerges. And Rhyme, before her soul entered that soup, Mr. H managed to collect the bits and pieces and turn her into a noise instead. But the rest of these people, their souls weren't collected. They entered the soup, so bringing them back to life should have been, essentially impossible even for the composer. I mean, this man does have his limits. For one thing, Rhyme wasn't actually brought back to life, fully intact. That's a big thing the anime didn't really bring up because it's definitely a downer. But basically, because she lost the game, because she died in the game, her entry fee was taken and was not brought back to her. Her entry fee was her dreams, her hopes, her ambitions for the future. So she has to move forward without those things in her life while she's alive. And that's gonna be interesting. Definitely gonna be interesting. I mean, the entry fee, the whole point of it is basically to make a person see, what life is like without the thing they value most, and if that thing really does matter at all to them. I mean, like I said, for Shiki, her thing was her appearance. She was utterly focused on that. But once she, lived without it, once she lived in Aries' shoes, she realized it didn't really matter. She was always who she was down in her heart, so her appearance stopped mattering to her. But for Rhyme, her dreams, her hopes, her ambitions for the future, I mean, what kind of life can you live without those things? Who would she be without those things? I'm rather curious about that. I mean, in the Another Day alternate universe storyline, she and Beat were stand-up comedians, so I guess that's always a possibility for her. Yeah, that Another Day thing was weird. That was really weird. But anyway, Joshua and Mr. H are watching from the distance on top of the 104 building, and as you might have guessed from the wings, Mr. H is an angel. Yeah, this world has angels in it. Apparently they're species from a higher plane of existence whose powers are actually even greater than that of the composer. So, yeah, that's terrifying. In fact, they're so much stronger than he is. They're so much stronger than this godlike being we've all been fearing for the last 3 weeks in the game, anime, whatever, that the composer can only interact with one of them, the producer, Mr. H. His job is basically to make sure that everyone follows the rules, Reapers and players alike, which makes it a tad ironic that he broke so very many of the rules, most notably him teaching Sho how to make taboo noise, which, big taboo, it's even in the name, so he's not so much an angel as a fallen angel. The full details of this aren't really explained all that well in the game, but it does seem like he's a wanted criminal, though he doesn't seem all that bothered by it, so maybe it's not that big of a deal, I'm not actually sure. Yeah, that's definitely interesting, though. I'm very curious to see what happens, moving forward with him, because let's not forget, this game is finally getting a sequel. It's releasing, I think, July 27th, about a month from now, and I'm so excited to play it. A demo was released a couple days ago. I haven't had a chance to check that out yet, but very interested in seeing that and just seeing where the storyline goes from here. I mean, there are definitely a few details from the anime I'm kind of curious about. I mean, for one thing, like I said, the composer brought back all the dead Reapers and players, so I'm kind of curious if they're going to be technically alive in the game now because they're in the canon of the anime brought back to life. I'm really not sure about that. Very curious. But yeah, those are my thoughts on anime. I know I complained a lot, but I'm definitely glad this anime happened. I mean, introduced so many new people to the series. I'm hoping it brings, a lot of people into the next game. The World Ends With You, Neo. Can't wait for that. And there are a few moments in here that just really shined that I absolutely freaking loved. I mean, for one thing, just, Rhyme's death felt so much more impactful in the anime, and oh god, that one scene where Neku watches Eri buy flowers for Shiki's grave. Oh my god, that broke my heart. That utterly broke my heart. And that was entirely new. That was not in the game at all, but it just felt so utterly perfect of a moment. It really showed the guilt and the pain that Neku was feeling over getting Shiki wrapped up in all this again, and his overwhelming desire to have her brought back to life. Oh my god, I loved it. I freaking loved it. Oh god, and there's that one side quest where they define the missing mic. If you only watch the anime, you probably don't even remember it, but in the game, it was such a long thing. It was like good 10-15 minutes of going around interviewing people time and time again to figure out exactly what happened to the mic. I am so glad they cut that down to almost nothing. Alright, and yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me think else down below. What did you think of the anime? Did you play the game? And if so, what are your feelings towards it? Definitely seeing a difference in opinion. I mean, among anime-only fans, I saw a lot more compliments, a lot more praise for the series. But among people that actually played the game, a lot of hatred, a lot of anger, a lot of feelings like they messed up a lot of things. But let me think else down below. Be sure to like, subscribe to this video. And until then, peace!